Hi everyone, in this part I'll continue gluing the matrices. That's the shapes which will form the future Quadra's body. I'll also try some new materials and manufacture technique. Logically the shape will be composite, otherwise it'd be impossible to pull the glued car body out of it. As long as I don't know how many component parts will contain the ready-made form, but I think there'll be around 20. I'll prepare the middle part before to continue working with the matrices. While it'll be drying covered with epoxy, I'll make the front sides matrices. As before, in order to strengthen the top layer, I painted the middle part of the body with the epoxy resin. Due to the width of the car, it's difficult to reach the central part of the roof. We need either to put an axle or to learn to fly, and still we need to putty it and seal with the glass fiber mat. The sides are already prepared for matrices removal, and they only need to be distinguished from the common part with the help of the masking tape, glue and PVC sheet. On this part, one decided to try to make a male-female joint, and made a pair of spikes from plasticine. With their help the shapes will fit together correctly, and there'll be no shifts. But most likely it'll be a test sample, as due to the bolts and the embedded plates the shape shouldn't move anywhere. I'll clearly show it when I'll gather the shape and next parts on the metal frame. Here's a promised and separative spirit from the last part, a thick liquid which leaves a separating film on the surface after drying. We need to treat a place of detail removal freely with this liquid. It is colorless and complicates the work. It's better to use the sponge again rather than later the matrix will tightly stick to the blank. It's written in the instruction that one need to apply the spirit with a sponge, but that composition erodes the usual sponge. This is the film that leaves the dried separating spirit. I'll be making both sides simultaneously. In the last part, one used a green matrix gel, from which I refused in favor of usual gel coat for details. The matrix gel shape is able to bear several thousand parts made in it. I don't need such strength, at the most of 1 or 2 parts in store, in case the bumper or the rocker panel will be damaged in the process. This gel coat becomes transparent after drying, and I decided to paint it with green color. It'd be more convenient to work with it. I mixed it with a hardener and covered the details. Since it's November already and it gets cool in the workshop, I used an infrared lamp to accelerate the solidification of polyester resin. While the whole thing dries, I'll rub the already dried epoxy resin clean. I bought one small assistant, a disc sander, as there'll be lot of work with the sandpaper during the whole project, and rubbing manually isn't the most pleasant occupation. I also made all work with water, but not without manual labor too. After the surface treatment with the emery paper, I returned to the sides again. Now we need to put the glass fiber mat on gel. I purchased it at once in a 40 kilograms roll. This time I'll roll it with help of a special roller, which I'll make myself from a 16mm stud. I drilled a hole in the center and put a stud on the handle from the dried roller. Before it I cut a thread on it and made a limiter. Here's practically a fabricated pinch roller we got. I also took 100 kilograms of budgetary polyester resin with a hardener in bulk at once for the project. I needed everything in the correct proportion and began to lay the glass fiber mat on the sides. As it turned out, it was much more convenient to glue the fiberglass with the roller, as there was less resin consumption and the layers were more tightly settled to each other. But it concerns only the flat surfaces. On other uneven surfaces I beetled the glass fiber with own hands. This way it takes the right shape more easily. During the work a huge amount of glass fiber mat's particles adheres to the gloves. The entire instrument was washed and stored in a solvent. That's how you can make many details with a single brush. Another side I glued with the glass fiber mat ripped into the needed pieces, not cutting like last time. This turned out to be more convenient as you shouldn't bruise along and cut the right amount of material, and some ragged edges can always be cut with the angle grinder. In this part I'll try more thick kind of glass fiber mat. Its braided and dense braiding pattern reminds carbon. I need it for finishing layers, to give an additional thickness to the detail and therefore strength. Before the stowing we need to remove all the needles from the surface. I decided not to glue the embedded plates and weld the metal frame for now. I want to glue the whole matrix first and then think about how to fit it all on the frame. Next goes a bumper with its complex relief. It'll be stuck in pieces too. I bordered the relative front plane and applied 2 layers of gel coat this time. The complex surface of the edges will be glued with fibers that I've prepared in advance. They have no connection in between and do not pull each other as a whole piece of glass fiber mat, for example. Now we move to the front corners, which will consist of 2 forms, the upper and the lower. I removed all the flangings and left one male-female joint for test. In order to distinguish the details we need to glue only one flanging. The earlier glued parts will play the role of other boards. I'm eager to take everything off and look what we'd have in the end, but it is not the time. First we need to glue the whole matrix. I'm done now with the front and ready to move to the middle part, which also contains some complex elements such as doors and doorways. I ran out of the last tin of putty and bought 2 more. After the surface treatment we need to restore the doors lines which remained under the putty. Fiberglass in such volume has a decent weight. I immediately reinforced the rocker panels with the additional foam stops. I'll start separating the door with the angle grinder, then continue with a knife and a ruler. I look at this door and can't even imagine which kind of drive I'll be making for it, but most likely there will be a hook like one in the Lumbo doors and the rails in the door itself, so the door can leave its place with the hook and move along the rails to the rear wheel. Sounds difficult, but I think it's possible to realize, and I'd like to make the door automatic and able to open from the button. In general, we'll see it further. And in the meantime we need to prepare the doorway and to make it thick enough. I increased its thickness for 10 centimeters due to foam offcuts. I think that will be enough as there's another console following the rocker panel. I protected the foam plastic with the epoxy resin and immediately began to putty it with automobile stuffing. There was a thick layer of putty which warmed up a little while solidification. Then everything was rubbed clean with the sandpaper and there appeared such opening. At this moment the video comes to end. Your likes, reposts and comments truly helps the channel growth. Thank you for watching and see you later.